What's up, y'all? Welcome back for another episode of Between Sundays, the podcast where we wrestle through things. We invite everyone here to wrestle through scripture, wrestle with God, wrestle with each other, be able to have the conversations that need to be had. My name is Theo. I'm a pastor here in Southern Maryland, a church called New Life in La Plata, Maryland. I have with me my co-host, Maxine.
Hey, y'all.
And we have with us a guest today. Her name is Kacie Sylvain.
Hello.
Kacie, we've been working together now for
6 years, 5 years, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, you've done a little bit of everything.
Yep.
I was going to try to name your title, but there are many.
Don't even try.
Right now, you're currently doing what?
Worship. I do worship and events for this campus.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Kacie is here with us to engage in an interesting conversation that I can't wait to have. I'm a little bit giddy about this one. The topic here is, what is a woman? Let's talk about it. Living between Sundays. Okay, so what is a woman? Man, that question, I got to be honest. I just have to be honest. I think it's a silly question. We can go to science. We have to go to science first and foremost, only because that's what everybody else decides they want to go by. I could go to my religion. I could go to what the Bible says, which is my first and foremost. But I mean, just right down to what science says, that a woman's chromosomes are XX and a man's chromosomes are XY, right? And everything about a man and a woman are so different. When I was growing up, there was no question as to the difference between man and woman, right? And then the older I get in these definitions that people try to put on it, the definitions that people say, well, this makes you a woman, this makes you a woman, man, it frustrated me a little bit in the beginning. And then it kind of became a little bit comical, if I can be honest. It became a little bit comical to me. But then it got to a point where it's like, no, I think we actually need to have the conversation, because there are a lot of people that feel the frustration, or that they don't engage in the conversation or in the feeling to try to wrestle through it a little bit. I grew up and my mom did lots of things. There was a season where she stayed home. There was a season where she worked part-time. There was a season where she worked full-time. And her role changed, although any of the things she didn't necessarily make her a woman, right? So that's what made it kind of interesting, this question, what is a woman, is because how do we actually define it other than the science, XX and XY, right? So that's why I've brought you two on here. I want to have this conversation, and I'm just going to say it from the beginning. I'm going to press a little bit. I want to have some difficult conversations. Some of these opinions will be some of the ones I've struggled through, and some of them will be just ones that I think are common ones that people struggle through, but I'm going to voice them because right now the camera can't voice them to you. So that's my thoughts, part of my thoughts anyway. Let's wrestle through it.
Okay. Cool.
When it comes to being a woman, Max, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
You know what's funny? You mentioned before, like, there was a time where you didn't even have this question. And so, like, it's very much the same for me. I don't have to think about what makes me a woman because I am a woman, So it's just who I am. And so, yeah, if I'm going to go and you're going to push me into science, which, by the way, I think it's really funny that, like, we have certain groups that, like, really want to use science for one thing and then don't want to use science for the other thing. Like, it's very convenient. But, like, for me, yeah, if I'm going to go off science, it's a base of our chromosomes. Those don't change no matter what type of clothes I want to wear, no matter what job I have, what role, what function, all of these things. But ultimately, like, I do feel like being a woman is a gift that God gave me. He created me in this way for certain things. But I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, what makes me a woman? Today I have a skirt on. Yeah, but yesterday I had some pants on. I have a skirt on today because it's cute and I felt like being cute. That's it. And if I didn't, gosh, I'm going into this real quick, but, like, I remember I was talking to someone who was going through some gender confusion, and she was like, yeah, I'm like, so why do you feel this way? She's like, man, I woke up and I wake up and I don't really feel like wearing a bra, man. I'm like, I don't either.
Yeah, but so what?
That does not make it
They
like, what are you
don't.
talking about? These are not the things. And so I think, you know,
So don't.
we're in this like
I mean, it's up to you.
caricature of a thing, and you know, we can kind of make fun of it here lightly, but I think, you know, if we push this a little bit more, it does get a little bit more sinister, right? Because at the end of the day, we're talking about identity.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're talking about the identity that God has crafted, and he set these two identities, these specific sexes for a purpose and a reason, and now we're trying to play God.
Yeah.
And that's a little scary to me. I think every one of these things is going to have repercussions and consequences, whether we want to think about it that way or not. So to answer your question, I am a woman. That's what makes me a woman. I was born one.
There's a lot of ways we can go with that there.
Yeah.
Because I was born one. What happens to the person that says, God made a mistake in my identity, and I feel like a woman? Everything you just described, I feel. There's days where I wake up and I feel cute and I want to put on a skirt. And what happens to that person who feels everything that you feel?
Well, like I said, those things are not what makes me a woman. That's just a way that I express something that I want to wear, but that's not what I wear. Or what I feel like wearing does not, in fact, change what I'm a woman. You're just playing dress up at that point, which is fine. It's your prerogative to do. But, you know, even if you have surgeries, right? If you're that far into this space, it still doesn't make you because there's no surgery that changes your chromosomes.
Yeah.
That there's nothing that exists that can actually do that. So for me, it is coming back to like, we're playing God a little bit, and that's our pride that makes it think that we can play God. That God is the one that must have made a mistake, as opposed to like, maybe there are some underlying issues that we have to address. And like that for some reason has become like a personal attack, right? Where in the past, I don't know. I mean, I think about this like we talk about this a little bit later on, but like, you know, only 20% of people who would call themselves in that category of like being transgender, only 20% of them actually are battling true clinical gender dysmorphia, right? Where it like physically pains them and hurts them and they're, you know, whatever. Gender dysmorphia or body dysmorphia in general, we classify as a mental illness, right? And so like if you were seeing somebody who was anorexic or bulimic or whatever, we would want to get them help. We wouldn't just continue to applaud however they're seeing themselves, because what they're seeing is not actually like facts. Right. And so I would approach this, you know, you have to do it with grace and with the truth and with love. But I think we've like really gone to the other end, which says like, okay, like in order for me to love you, I have to agree with you. But there are some things that are just unchangeable. And like, this is one of those things, right? The same people would look at you crazy if you're like, oh yeah, like I am physically a black person, but I feel white today, and so I'm white instead, and or vice versa. A white person trying to say, well, I'm black, even though you have a whole fight with that. You're not. Right? You're just not. No matter how much you want it to be, no matter how much you dress up, no matter how much you feel that your identity is, you just are not. And the mere fact that you have to think about what you need to do in order to show yourself to be that way also reminds you that you're not that. So I don't know.
I don't have to work at it. Like I just am. Like when you text me this, hey, I want you on a podcast about what's a woman. I looked at my husband and was like, I don't know. I just was born this way. Like I came out a girl. I don't know. And to something y'all were saying, like I heard the word feel a lot. I feel this way. Okay, but our emotions lie to us. Like that is the first thing the enemy uses. Is your inner talk and your brain and like all the lies that you believe. He can just wield them so quickly against you. So it's not, you can't base these massive decisions off of feeling. It's just not biblical.
So what do you say to the person that is not a believer in God, right? I guess the only place you can go is chromosomes.
Yeah, you really can.
Because,
Right.
you know, we're, you know, the three of us, we're believers, and we
Yeah.
believe in creating God's image. And I said this in a different conversation, how I think it's so beautiful that Jesus chose to be human, right? He chose to actually wrap himself in human flesh. Yes, fully God, fully man. That's the crazy part. But he was fully man in a sense as well.
Yeah.
And I believe that was kind of a stamp of like what God created to be good. He wasn't fluid. He was one, you know, he was one. And so there's so many places in scripture. We believe that, right?
Yeah.
But to the person who is not a biblical believer, is the only place you go is chromosomes.
So here's the thing. I always want to like ask why I'm engaging with a particular person, right? So like if somebody who's non-believer is asking me this question, why are you asking me this question? Right? Because I kind of come back to this idea of like, when I know that something is a part of me and that I am this, I don't feel the need to beat my chest, make everybody see me that way under, because I am. Right? I'm going to put a pin in right now in just like the woman thing, but just in other spaces. For me, when I look at leaders, like actual true leaders who have changed lives, who have done great things, I don't hear them constantly saying, I'm this great leader. I change lives. I transform things.
Yeah.
They are just doing
They're
it.
just
They
them.
are.
Yeah.
Right. And there's something similar to that, or, you know, the person who is actually confident is not going around all the time be like, well, I'm confident. I'm the most confident person you're going to be. Like, if anything, that's like a red flag to me. If you're constantly trying to tell me, similarly, if you're a man and you're like, I'm the manliest man there is, and, you know, no one's going to outman me. Ha ha ha.
You make me feel the opposite.
Yes, you make me feel the opposite. And I'm kind of like, okay, where is that insecurity coming from?
Yeah.
And part of this is, you know, I don't think it's a mistake that we called it gender affirming, right? They need to be affirmed because there is something there that's telling you this is not right and this is not true. So I need society around me to come and agree with me. And if you don't, now I'm personally attacked, right? And so I kind of come back to this, like, what implications are, just logically, right? Implications of the erasure of like a woman being a woman, a man being a man. What happens here, right? Well, one, we know mental health is not great in this community, right? We know families are broken. We know that people are, you know, inwardly tortured, right? And we know that by them dressing up, although it might give you a temporary relief, it doesn't actually solve the problem.
Right.
And anytime in this world, when we try to take a shortcut, it backfires on us. Maybe not immediately in that instant, but like,
it does.
You can guarantee it's going to.
It's going to backfire in some capacity, in some way. And so when I look at it like this, I'm like, man, who benefits? What benefits from us being all out of sorts about something that is so basic like this? And I come to, if you're spiritual, I come to the enemy. He's the one who wants to destroy families and destroy the kingdom of God. And this is an excellent way to do it. It's a way that's worked in the past. So it's just like repetitive. And if I go outside of this and I want to be like, you know, conspiracy theorists and all this stuff, like if I go outside of this nature, I mean, like, people in this grouping are not getting married. They're not getting married at the same rates. That's then I get to tax more, and I get to, and then if you're sick, I get to give you more medicine, and you need surgeries, you need this, you need, like, there's all of these other systems into play that make me question why all of a sudden we're feeding like this narrative, as opposed to letting it just be a part of how we grow. As teenagers, we're crazy. Hormones are crazy. Everything is crazy. Why are we pushing certain things?
And like you said, this was not a thing when I was growing up. I am 39, and I feel like, did I grow up in a totally different universe than some of these people? Like, how can we grow up at the same time but have such drastically different narratives of what's actually happening right in front of us? It really doesn't make sense.
What I noticed, I was going through a book, and y'all will hear me mention this often, Return of the Gods. And it, you know, there's stuff that was happening back in the 60s, right? But it was like it was small groups. It was things that was happening that was setting the stage for now. It's widespread and it's everywhere. And it's one of those things that, you know, I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist as well. On top of, I believe in principalities of darkness. I believe in the spiritual warfare. So, all that together is like, this is orchestrated. This is not by accident. This is not just, people being people. It's a plan that's being executed.
Look, like if you see a lot of like interactions, interviews, videos and stuff, like it kind of gets to me because a lot of the questions says like the Bible doesn't really say this. Where does it say that? God didn't say that. Jesus didn't say that. He didn't really say. And it's like it goes back to like the very beginning. Did God really say?
Yeah.
It's like the same. We're literally falling into the same trap over and over. And I know there are people who are like, well, like, what do you care? It doesn't, let everybody be happy if it makes them happy. Like, well, the reality is we don't live isolated. That's not a thing.
Right.
It's not a thing. How someone else lives does affect us.
Yes.
It does affect everyone.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about teachers in our schools. We're talking about, people in our society that are going to have an influence on everyone's, families and lives. So it's like you said, it's not an isolated thing.
Right. Yep. Right.
Okay. So kind of moving on a little bit when we get from the science side of it, okay, say we get in a room full of people and everyone agrees XX, XY, there's a difference, all of that. Now we get to the question of what is a woman, because just because you are born a woman doesn't mean you are actually living to the full potential that God created you to be. So God created you a woman. Okay, bare minimum, you've got XX chromosomes, right? But what does it mean to live into that as to what God created you to be? That's kind of where I want to go next.
Yeah. Are you asking specifically like what makes a biblical woman? Is that where we're going here?
We can go there, right? I look at examples like Proverbs 31.
Yeah.
Right? Like Proverbs 31 it's a whole laundry list in there of the things that she does, right?
Yeah.
If you actually look at it, she has her own business to some degree. She's selling, I believe it's scarves or some kind of fabric or something. She is purchasing fields and, she's buying, selling, she's taking care of the home. She is, it's a lot of things that she does. And then it goes on to say her children praise her, her husband praises her. And it's like, I think anybody would praise this woman. She's doing a lot, right? Yeah. What happens to the woman that says, if that's what it means to be a woman,
I'm out.
I ain't got all that in me, right?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's a daily thing, right? Like how many, like, listen, I tend to look at the Proverbs 31 woman as like a lifetime, not just like on any given day is she doing all of these things.
I mean, you can't.
That's crazy,
You don't
right?
have enough hours in the day.
They did not have like washing machines.
No.
Okay. She's doing this on the rocks.
Yeah.
Like, come on now. She's not doing all this stuff in one day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we look at them, we're like overwhelmed. Man, I got to do all of these things.
Yes.
And I don't think that's what it was at all. I think it's a guide. It's a guide for showing certain characteristics.
Yeah, and like you said, it's a guide for your life, not a guide for maybe the season that you're in,
right?
Like the short period of time. It's a massive amount of time to live out these things. So don't put those massive expectations on yourself, because that's the overwhelming part. Like, that's hard to live up to every single day, every hour.
Yeah. And I'm reading this. I'm like, man, where are the kids? Where is the husband? What are they doing? Like, come on, what's going on here?
Why is it up to her?
Yeah. So I definitely think we're reading. I think we're reading it. I think the way we have read it has hurt us in a bit, because you're right. Some of that is exhausting. And so some women are like, I'm not going to ever live up to. I mean, there are people who, recently I just got back from a retreat and we talked about this actually, and there was somebody there who was like, I don't feel like I can live up to this woman specifically because of everything that I have done and everything that came before me actually giving my life to Christ. And so I feel like if we do that, that's damaging to anybody, right? Yeah. As opposed to being like, no, this is a gradual process. And I'm really big on doing things with the Holy Spirit. Yeah. When he tells you to do something, he will release you into it. So there are certain things, there are certain qualities when I look at, women and their role really, right? So like we talked about like being the helper, right? In the beginning, what does that look like to be the helper to my husband, right? And for me personally, it's not, I don't look at it as a derogatory kind of like I'm secondary, but no, there's something about my function that when I come along him, I can lift him, I can elevate him, I can nudge him, I can take, there's this like out of the Bible saying, but like, a man can buy the house, but a woman makes the home kind of thing. And it's that idea of like, I can elevate where he is if we're working together on something. That's where I look at like the help piece there. So I don't know. I think we need to chill out a little bit. I think, listen, he did create us man and woman, but overall our identity is in Christ. Right. So there are things that we need to do just to be a good Christian that we can't even get right. So it's
for
like,
real.
Let's go there first. And then I think naturally as we learn, being in community with other really strong women of God, that helps kind of shape and craft how I pray. Is going to be different than the way my husband prays because I have a mother's heart right now. Right. That's just going to be different than how he prays. And he should be praying in a different way because he has a father's heart. That's way different than I would. And I think those things are good. They're not, a detriment, but the enemy will have us think that it is a detriment, right? Because we want to co-opt whatever the other person's doing.
Right. So this idea of being a helper, and you kind of got into a little bit. You said you don't really view it as derogatory or secondary. What makes you believe that the woman is not secondary?
Secondary in creation, we were created second. There's no denying that. Secondary in worth, no. Right. I think that God values both men and women equally. We both have inherent worth because we are his children. And I think what societies across the board have used positional creation, positional creation to talk about inherent worth. And that's wrong. That's not scriptural. That's not in there. But we were created second. But I don't know that being created first is the flex we think it is. I mean, man was created first, and it's the only thing God says wasn't good. He says it's not good for man to be. It's only everything else he created is good. We're good. Then man comes. Man is chilling by himself, working, doing all the stuff, naming all the animals, and he's lonely. He's lonely. And we think about this like God could have just created another Adam. And that would have been companionship. It would have been enough to just build companionship, but he didn't. He built a woman for intimacy and relationship.
Right. And it's not just companionship that we look for. Like, we need the other person's characteristics and their qualities and their giftings and their abilities to make our lives better and to go forward together.
So to the person looks at you and says, okay, you're saying God's design, all this stuff, but in your Bible, God's people, the Jewish people, the way they valued women was nothing like what you're saying right now. These were God's chosen people, and women were not allowed in the temples. Women were not allowed to be really in any high-end business. So how do you explain your philosophy, your thoughts on women value, all of that, versus what we see played out in the Bible?
The way that I explain it is that God walks into our timeline and where we are. And so I think that there are systems in place. Patriarchy has always been there. It's very present. I don't think it was God's design to make this battle the way that it is. It was part of the fall. Right. And we hear that from the beginning, like, because listen, Eve is tempted by the serpent, whatever, snake, whatever you want to call this thing. It was the serpent,
the devil,
right? She was tempted. Okay. But it was Adam's job to have protected her. Adam received the commandment directly from God. God told Adam, don't eat from this. It was Adam's job to then pass that information along to Eve and make sure that she followed through. And then he doesn't do that. right? She presents this temptation, and what he should have done right there is take responsibility and ownership and said, nah, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
Slap the apple, pull his thing, and he doesn't do that. He doesn't. He's like, okay, well, if she's doing that, and we see this abdication of responsibility right from the beginning. I don't want to be responsible for this. So let's do it. And then I can always just backfire and blame this way.
Right.
So we see that from the very beginning. And so as a result of that, the curse happens, the curse falls. And part of that is that, you know, men are going to have to work the land, women are going to have pain in childbirth. The woman will crush the
serpent's head
and all this stuff. But part of that also is that the woman will desire for her husband and the man will want to rule over her. That power imbalance comes right from the fall. It's not the way that it was intended. It is a result of sin. And so we can't negate that. We can't look at the Bible and be like, oh, I actually think it's what makes the Bible so interesting and so worth reading, because we are not reading a book about a whole bunch of perfect people. We're seeing all of the imperfect stuff. And it's being told the way it is. Someone could have looked at all these documents and be like, nah, we need to clean this up. Let's make this sound better.
That sounds too harsh. Let's make it prettier.
Right? They don't do that. No. They're like, no, here's all of our junk. Here's all of our mess. And let me show you how God still came through the middle of that. So this is what I'm saying. Like, some of these things are just descriptive. They're not prescriptive. It's not, we don't do as they do. But then we also, as Christians, we also believe in the New Testament as the Word of God. And when Jesus comes, he sets a new example. He shows us something completely new about women and their worth, right? And we know this, like, he had his 12 disciples, but in that company of disciples were women. And there were women who sat at Jesus's feet. Like, and we don't really use this language anymore because we're like, you know, we have chairs and tables and stuff, but we don't understand, like, if someone was sitting at a rabbi's feet, it means they were a student of the rabbi. So when we get Mary was sitting at Jesus's feet, it's a lot more controversial than the scripture is making it seem.
She was in a place she was not supposed to be.
Exactly. And so we lose some of that because we don't understand the context of that time period. But back then, the Jewish people reading this would have seen that and would have been like, what is going on? Like, this is not right. You know? And so we see a lot of people are like, oh, you know, the Bible is just like misogynistic and no. It's not. It's playing out. It's going to show you when men left to their own devices, what they will do. And then how Jesus comes in and flips the script on them and says, we are called to something better. But you can't really see that if you don't see the chaos first. You know? So
that's good. That's good. This idea of God creating women to be the helper, not to be. So, I mean, you can look at scriptures that talk about honoring and loving the wife as the weaker vessel, the woman as a weaker vessel. I was a young man when it was described sort of like fine china. Right? Where you've got this, my dad specifically, he had this cabinet with fine china. And I'll never forget, only like once a year he would take it out for Thanksgiving dinner, and you didn't put it in the dishwasher, you didn't, you washed it by hand, and you didn't just throw them all in the sink, one at a time in the sink, you washed it, took special care of it. We weren't using knives, chipping them all up, like it was there was a procedure to using this china, and then as soon as it was done, you're washing it, you're putting it right back in there. And so this passage of scripture was explained to me that that's the way men are to view and to love their wives and women in general, was not to look at them as weaker, as in less than, but as in special, as in sanctified, as in set apart, right? Okay, viewing all this, knowing that women were designed to help and to come alongside. I love the fact that the word for woman, helper, was the same word used in the New Testament for Holy Spirit being a helper, right? It's almost this, it's another one of those kind of stamps of like approval and like this is what God intended for it to be. All that being said, how do you balance being a helper, but also being very driven and having your own, it's okay, I'm trying to explain this as best I can. Being someone who is driven myself, it is sometimes difficult to look at someone else and say, okay, let me help you with what you're driven in instead of focusing on what I'm driven in. So from the viewpoint of a woman who is linked to a man, right, and your God-given role is to help. How do you, as accomplished, driven women, balance my job is to help my husband, but you're also driven, and do you want to do your own thing sometimes? Right. How do you fight that? How do you come back into submission? What does that look like?
I think for me and my husband and our family, it boiled down to having a lot of conversations about what he wanted to do versus what I wanted to do, and how can we align those things, not make them the same thing. So we're both in ministry, not make them the same thing, but come alongside each other. So it all boils down to compromise. We compromise our time, we compromise our money, we compromise our family, we compromise everything for each other, so that not one is out ahead of another. We're running at the same pace right now anyway. There was a time where I was way back here and he was way up there, because that's what the role and the season of our life called for. I stayed home, and so I was his helper at home. That meant making sure that he was nourished when he came home from work and went to work. Not that I would necessarily get up and feed him. He's my wonderful husband. Here's all of your meals. No, like the man still made his own food. The man still did his own thing sometimes. But like, I just knew in that season, my role as the helper in that time was to take care of a lot of the home things so that he could go and support our whole family and feel that home was taken care of when he was gone. And now at this time, it's, well, you're going to be home at this time and I'm not going to be home at this time. So you need to do that and I will do this. But do you need any help at work? Do you need help in worship? Do you, like, we're helping each other in very different ways, the different seasons that we're in. That might not answer your question, but
you're saying the role of helper shifts.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
So what happens when you're speaking to the couple or the woman who's in this relationship where that shifting is rocky, right? What happens when the man says, I work hard, and so you need to have my dinner ready when I get home, and I want my lunch packed for me, right? And it's your job to be my helper.
Yep.
You know something? I think about this and like, let me not get in trouble here, but
I'm thinking how to say this nicely.
Just say it.
It's
Just
very
say it.
hard.
Look.
Oh.
I think men need to be more concerned with the role that they are to fulfill, that God is calling them as husbands. And the more that a husband is fulfilling that role, the more the woman will be allowed to step into her role. And I know this is going to be controversial, because I know, like, you're called to be I know we're all called to be Christian. We're all called to do the right thing all of the time. But I know for me, being in a safe, secure relationship right now, I have been allowed to flourish.
Yeah.
Right. And because of the love that my husband gives me, it's very easy to respect him. It is very easy to think about him first. It is very easy to come in and be like, you know what, maybe I'm not seeing this the right way.
Yeah. Because
he loves me really well. And I think sometimes there are men who are sort of putting the demand first ahead of, well, just because I'm the man and I'm working, I need X, Y, and Z. I'm like, are you loving your wife well? Because if you're loving your wife well, that should breathe new life into her, where she will want to do these things, right? And I guess vice versa too. As a woman, if you're just wild disrespectful, men need respect. And this is a biblical principle here,
love
right? Women need love, men need respect.
Is that Ephesians 5, right?
Sure. Yes, Pastor. Yeah, listen, I know the word, but to give you the address, you need somebody else here. Okay.
I got you.
But yeah, I mean, you know, if you're a wild, disrespectful woman and you just feel entitled to all of these things, then it's going to be very hard for your man to love you.
Yeah.
You know, we have to, as women, there's a space of us that needs to be vulnerable. As tough as you are out, like boss lady out in the blah, blah, like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna get in trouble again, but like I have a very hard time believing that men want to come home to another like mannish woman, you know. And I'm saying this being from Brooklyn, New York, because you know how we are. You know how we are, okay? How we can talk, right? But like, you know,
hear
what I'm
the
talking
shift
about?
in your voice.
Yes, it's a very aggressive kind of thing. But like sometimes, but I get it, right? Like you need somebody to help you get into your soft girl era. Like I get that, you know, I fully understand that. So you know, and that's not to say like, you know. Listen, I went through a season when I've always been super driven. I've always been a hustler, like have a million jobs, doing all the stuff. That's just like been very me. But when my husband and I got married that first year, I was only working part-time from like, because I had just moved states or anything. My old employer was like, hey, let me just help you out, give you a little part-time job. And he actually was like, I want you to focus on just being a wife. He's like, I just think a young lady in her first year of marriage should really, he was so sweet. And had I been a different kind of person, I would have been like, you know, foolish and not taken he was paying me full time to work 10 hours. You know what I mean? Had I been like, no, I got to be a woman, hear me roar, and I'm going to then I would have missed that huge blessing that I had that first year of being able, my husband going out all day working and me actually having meals ready for him. Yeah. It didn't make me less of a woman. It didn't make me less independent. Nothing. It was just a season that we were in and being able to do that. But had he not been loving me well, you know, that dinner wouldn't have tasted as good.
You would have gotten McDonald's.
This is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? And so we have to like kind of, I don't know. I think sometimes some of us have to come back into this rhythm, and there can be a pride sometimes, I think, that comes when there's insecurity. And the insecurity is not necessarily, you know, the other person making you feel insecure. It could just be your own things, too. Right? If you have an insecure man, he is the insecure man is more likely to beat his chest and say, see me as a man, see me as a man. The same thing conversation where we started before. Whereas if you are secure in a man, you know you're a man and you can operate as such, and you will provide that guidance in the house and you'll provide that strong but firm but loving space in the home. But when you're not, when that's something off kilter there, when your identity is not coming from Jesus anymore, then I have to exert myself. I am the man by demanding XYZ, by saying you're beneath me, by beating you, by physical intimidation, by saying you're worth less than I am. All of those things just scream insecurity to me.
And the two flip, right? There needs to be identity, security for both the man and the woman. There needs to be humility for both, right? Because you could flip that too and say the woman who's very insecure is going to need to beat her chest and say, you don't tell me what to do.
This is what I'm saying. Like the relationship has to be like both and, like, because I was saying before, like it's very hard for a woman who has been independent her whole life, been fighting her whole life, protecting herself her whole life. Now she comes into a marriage. That's going to be, that's hard.
It's hard because you have to take the reins off and say, do I trust you enough not to hurt me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Even if you've been dating.
Right.
It's a whole nother realm.
So here's one. Have your husbands had to, if you want to share, you can. Or you can just say, I don't want to share that story. That's fine. Have your husbands had to pull the no card? Just straight up, no, you're not doing that, or we're not doing that. And how did you handle that?
Yeah,
inwardly, outwardly, how'd you handle it?
I don't honestly remember the whole situation. I just remember him at one point. We were in an argument. It was very early on in marriage, and we got married and had a kid like within the first year and a half of our marriage. And so being newly married and having a brand new baby, like all before 2 or 3 years of marriage, is a lot. You need time to get to know each other. Even if you were dating, we didn't live together before, but like moving into one space with another person, that's a lot. Then throw a baby on top, forget it. So we were arguing about something, and he just looked at me and said, I just need you to respect me. And it made me stop in my tracks And I think he was saying no about something.
Yeah.
And I was challenging because that's my personality. But it made me stop because I was never taught that. I came from a home with a single mom, mostly a single mom. Like, she was married for years out of my childhood, but it wasn't the greatest marriage. So like, I just don't count it, honestly. But it made me stop and was like, whoa, I do. Like, I do need to do that.
Wow.
Because that is what I've been called to do. That is what I said yes to do.
Yeah.
That's not, my vows aren't just in sickness and in health.
Yeah.
Like, they also bind me in love and respect as well. And vividly, that comes back from time to time, because there are things like, he doesn't like to tell me no. I don't necessarily like to tell him no either.
Yeah, that's
but he's got to rein me in sometimes.
Right. I call it the biblical harmony. I call it the biblical harmony.
Is.
Whenever I'm doing premarital with a couple, I'll take them to Ephesians 5. That's why it's always on my brain. But it talks about husbands loving your wives and wives respecting your husbands.
Yeah.
And oftentimes what I'll do is I'll end our whatever session we're on with that. I'll send them home with it, and I'll give them no context. I'll just say, read Ephesians 5. I'm terrible now that I'm thinking about it. I'll say, read Ephesians 5. I think it's verses 21 through 33 or something like that. I don't know. And I'll tell them, read it, discuss it a little bit together, and then we'll talk about it when we get back. And I just love seeing their faces when we get back for the next session. And they're, I don't know about this, I got to respect him as I respect the Lord. That's what the Bible says. And, going on and on. And I love when I break it down, and essentially what we've been saying here today. And I'll say, look, husband, if you are loving her as Christ loved the church, sacrificing yourself for her, sacrificing your wants, your desires for the betterment of her, for the betterment of your family, she's going to have no problem respecting you. She's
It really does.
And that's the thing. The fact that you said that he doesn't like saying no, that makes all the difference. Yes. When my wife and I have been married for 8 years now, we just crossed 8 years, and I've never pulled the no card because I've never had to. Have we argued? Yes. Have we had differences in opinion? Yes, Lord, we have, because we're humans and we just disagree on things. But it's never gotten to the point where I had to pull the no card.
Yeah.
And so the moment, if it does happen, I have no doubt that she would be like, okay.
Yeah.
Because it's not something, I don't enjoy lording over her, right? Like, it's, in fact, it's the opposite. If anything, I can recognize Adam in myself. I can recognize I don't want to take responsibility for somebody else. I don't want to be in charge. I don't want, so that's something God works on me in. But because of that, if I ever have to stand 10 toes down on something and say, hey, look, I have to pull the husband card and this is not what we're doing, then I don't expect, we'll see, we'll have another podcast episode, but I don't expect
gotta bring her on here.
Any huge episode. I mean, any huge problems. What about you, Max?
Yeah, I mean, yes. And I can think of like a couple, but like, I'll give you a silly one to start and then I'll give you a serious one. But like, I really liked my last name, my maiden name. Like, I really liked it. Roca. Roca in Spanish means rock.
I was going to say, it
rolls,
nice.
And it just, I don't know, I've just always really liked my name. Like the way it sounded, everything. And also like it was part of my like Hispanic culture. And like, then I'm about to get married and my husband has a last name that is not Hispanic. And I was like, oh, so can we do like a hyphen situation? Can I just bring it with me? Like, And he just looked at me. He's like, nah, we don't do that. Just like very flat, very serious.
I can hear him saying,
just like, no. Nah. And I was like, okay, all right. And like, it took me a while to like just embrace like, no, this is who I am. And I actually feel so very different than that person, than Maxine Roca, like who I am now. Maxine Higgins is like a completely different person. So it makes sense. But it was a really hard no for me at the time, And so, so that's like on a lighter level. On a more serious level, like, we talked, like I have this retreat organization. I had all these plans for it and stuff. And so I was telling him as when we first got together again as adults, because we came back together, about everything I do and blah, blah. And I was like, all these plans I have. And like, I would love for this to be in a men's prison. Like I'm telling him, right? Like I could just see it right now. Like I want to reach the people who like all on the other side of this. And he just looked at me. He's like, no.
No, girl, no.
It's not happening. And I was like, but like the Lord, he's like, no. And I'm
Lord
like,
can bring somebody else.
that's
to do
literally,
that.
that's exactly the thing. So this is something like, I still feel it in my heart that this is supposed to be it, but I know that it's not me to do it, right? It's going to be released at the right time with someone else, because I want my husband to be on board. And like for everything else, even if he'll initially be like, I don't know about something, he does think about it. He goes off, he'll pray, he'll think about it, and then he'll come back, and like 9 out of 10 he comes around, right? And he'd be like, all right, I was thinking about that thing, and all right, let's go ahead, let's try it, you know. And so there's a ebb and flow to things. He's also like, I think he's really come to appreciate that God works in really hilarious ways in my life, and so he's getting more like used to that kind of bone. When I came for my interview for this job, well, it wasn't an interview, I thought I was coming for lunch and with some random lady, and I was like, this is really weird, she wants to meet at church, but okay. And we had prior made a rule, like no lunches at like we're not taking any lunches at church, because that's how you got into ministry last time, and we're not repeating this thing. And I was like, yeah, I'm on board with you, you know. And then come home from this lunch and they offered me a job. And so I was like, babe, you're never going to guess what happened at this lunch. He's like, they offered you a job. And I was like, how did you know? He's like, this always happens. Like, he's like, I told you not to go to lunch anymore. And, you know, but, you know, he thought about it for a second. And after I told him everything, he's like, you got to take it. That's you know, awesome. And had I been the one like, no, I'm going to force this thing and it's got to be X, Y, Z, like his defenses would also go up, you know? And so I've learned how to deal with that as well. Like I'll bring up an idea. If my husband shuts it down immediately, I just kind of wait on the Lord. Wait that God would come and follow him. Because if it is something I'm supposed to do, God knows that. Right. And God will bring him to the place. And if it's not something to do, then he won't get on board with it.
You just kind of touched on something that is not just specific to women, but since this episode is on women, I'll highlight it. You said that if you had tried to force it, then his defenses would be up.
Yeah.
This is coming from a man, so push back if you need to.
Sure.
But I feel like something that a lot of women miss is that don't force it. Is that I forget where in Proverbs, but it says like a soft answer turns away wrath. I feel like my dad used to call it pillow talk, and he was like, not in a sexy way. He was like, but so much can happen when you're in that space of we're just laying down a few minutes before we go to sleep, and he was like, the queen has the king's ear in that moment. And again, nothing sexual, just we're here in this space together. And I feel like so many women don't understand that space of like, I don't have to just fight you on this thing. I can be nice. I can be nice and disagree. I can be nice and.
But sometimes the women don't always get that space to do that.
Yeah,
that's fair.
And that's a problem. That's a whole different podcast. But like that space has to be given in order to be taken. So there's an ebb and flow, just like we've said all along.
Yeah.
And I am going to be super transparent and say, like, the Maxine that my husband had when we were dating as teenagers, pre-Jesus, was very pushy and like very like, you got to do it my way. My way is the right way, blah, blah, blah. And like, I had no Jesus. I had no nothing. I was all go all the time. That wasn't his personality. But I could recognize, and like he'll tell you to this day, like some of those times that I pushed him were really good. They were the right push. He needed that push. He needed it that hard to go off and accomplish the things. And other times it was just like I wounded him for no reason. And I didn't have the discernment then. I didn't understand. And so, it did take, we broke up in the middle for like 5 years. There's a lot of growth that happened in 5 years. Part of what happened is I got saved, and it began to transform the way that I like spoke and talked and things. And one of the things that once we got married, we both were on this like financial journey, but in different ways. I was trying to kill all of my student debt, and he had no debt. He was out already in his real estate business doing all this stuff, But we both had end goals that were similar, but we had wildly different perspectives on how to get to where we wanted to go.
Okay.
And so I'm sitting there, like, I know my way is working. Like, my way is where I'm doing the thing. And he's insisting, no, my way is working. I'm doing the thing. And like, we're just like, so it took us like a good 6 months of like arguing, going back and forth and figuring out. And at some point in that 6 months, I really felt from the Lord, like, hey, you're making this issue about whether you know the right thing and not trusting him, right?
Yeah.
As a man, as a husband, as a provider, or you think that it's about that, but it's actually about you not trusting me. And like, God really convicted me in this space. Like, I actually am not trusting God that he gave me the right husband that would be able to come up with a right plan for us. And that was something like, that was a huge kind of shift for me and the way that I dealt with him in all other areas as well. Like, no, God, like, you brought us together, and I trusted this man enough to get married to him. So let me trust that he has a way forward for us. And so we came back to a different kind of conversation. And so now, since I'm like here, he's also like come down a lot. And now all of a sudden, compromise. We have a way that includes bits of what I was doing and bits of what he's doing. And now we're done, a few years later. Right. And so it's a process. It's a journey, but you have to be willing and submitted to God.
Exactly. I was just getting ready to say that. I feel like people can have good marriages aside from believing in God, aside from relationships with him, but there's that space where you allowed Holy Spirit to work on you, to speak to you, right? Because I can only speak for me. I cannot speak for all men, but I'm one that, while I said earlier, I can recognize the Adam in me that doesn't want to take responsibility, but I'm also the kind of person where I'm like, I could say this about my, I looked at churches growing up, and I never thought I would be a pastor, but I would get tired of seeing pastors that disrespected the word of God or disrespected the platform. It's the same way for me when it comes to just life in general. I'm not the guy that I'm going to push my way out front, but I'm like, man, if nobody else is going to do it, I guess I will, because I want it to be done right. That being said, even though I'm not very forceful, I will not be bullied. I will not be bullied in my house, right? So I'm that kind of person where it's like, if you come at me in a pushy sense, like, you will get those defenses. And I'm gonna be honest with y'all. Pastor gets cranky sometimes. I have my days, right? And I'm the kind of person, I'm not a yeller. I don't yell. I'm the person who. Can
you try to yell right now? I just want to hear.
I don't honestly think volume. He can. He can't. I sing with him. He cannot.
All the sound techs are always saying, project more, Theo. Project more. I'm like, this is all I got. This is all I got. I just had a conversation with Tony. He had to switch my mic because I don't talk loud enough. But I'm not a yeller, but I'm sharp. I'm sharp, and I can be sharp with the truth. And it's one of those things where, and this is not me excusing my faults at all, but it's one of those things where I've realized growing up, I've realized being married now for 8 years, a lot can change on either end with conversation with how you approach it, right? I can go to her when I'm having one of my days and I can be like, blah, 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 versus when I come to her and I'm softer, I'm nicer, I'm more considerate, right? Again, this goes on both sides, but since we're specifically talking women, I feel like that is an art that has been lost due to a lot of different things, right? You can go back to all the women's lib and feminism and all that kind of stuff where, you don't need no man kind of thing. And it just, we've lost the art of being able to come together to be a team, right? Knowing each other's strengths, knowing each other's weaknesses. But it all goes back to this humility.
Yeah. And the sin, coming back to that piece here, because again, it's like, what is lost if we can distort this, right? So if I can distort how a woman should appear in the world, right? Then what is lost? Well, men don't have their helpers, right? Yeah. And then men are not as great as they could be. And this is not to take away of the greatness of a woman. I believe that women are called to be great as well. That's not what I'm saying, but if we have women just so angry at men all the time that you can't even get on the same frequency level to have a conversation, if you have to fight for everything, what is lost? And I look at that because, we look at broken families and there's no communication there, and the way that we speak, and then the kids grow up speaking that way as well, and it just kind of spills out all over the place. And my heart breaks because, y'all, like, being a parent is the hardest thing I have ever done in my entire life. Like, nothing nothing can even come close. No. Okay, nothing. Nope. And so I'm sitting here and I'm like, how do single moms do this?
Yeah,
because this is so hard. And my husband is very present. Like, he makes the breakfast, he changes diapers, he plays with the kids, he's like, he's there. He's not like trying to like, oh, I'm gonna run out and go get a beer somewhere so I can escape the house. That's not my husband. He's there. And still, it's exhausting, and it's so very difficult for me. So I can't imagine the single parent who's trying to do everything by themselves, and the amount of, listen, I get out-touched, I get overwhelmed, I get like all this stuff, and then you have nowhere to do that. And so that's going to create a harder woman. Absolutely. For the most part. Yeah. If a woman has to raise the children, be worried about the bills, clean, be at all the doctor's appointments and all the kids and all of this stuff, it's going to create a harder woman. I mean, it has to. It has to. You don't survive. To get it done, right? Yeah, you don't survive otherwise. Yeah. But then, let's say that person goes in and gets married, and the spouse is not the husband is not patient enough to help her unravel that, to put the shoulders down, to be able to breathe, to give her space, to say, hey, you're comfortable and safe here. That's not going to happen. And I do believe it is the husband's responsibility first to create that environment so that the woman can make it a home. But like you said before, if they don't give that space, it's not going to happen. And so, like, it's twofold here. Women, I'm getting in trouble again. Women need to stop being desperate and choosing men that are going to have a good time with you and pay attention to you when they want something, and then they disappear when you don't, and now you have a ton of children and you chose a guy who didn't want to be a father. We got to stop doing that. And I know you coming from me, listen, I was a product of this, right? My mom was a single mom. I get it. It was hard on everybody, but we have to do better at choosing men. We can't get angry at all men because the last 5 men that you dated, who you had no business dating in the first place, were whatever kind of man you say that they were. Okay? We have to take responsibility there. But for men, there's a call for men too. Y'all need to step up. Men have to want to be men again. They have to want to, when I say men be men, I don't mean it in the like, dress like man and talk deep and bravado. I mean, when I think of a man, I think about somebody who is secure, who is safe, who has integrity, who wants to work, who is decisive, who wants to create and provide, and who has the ability to be humble and love a woman. That to me, that encompasses the character of a man. A good man anyway. Right?
My dad used to say, priest, provider, protector of your home.
Great. That is so much easier than what I just said. Thanks. Could have cut me off earlier.
Okay. So women need to do a better job of picking. Men need to be a better job of stepping up, right? Now, I want to speak to something, and again, push back if y'all need to, but say the man is doing his very best to create this space, right? I want to talk about the importance of women with having a tribe. Having other women that are investing in them, women who are peers. And then 2, can we talk about the very real fact of hormones, mental health, all that stuff, right? Because it doesn't matter how good of a man you have or how good you picked or any of that kind of stuff. If you're not healthy, right? Like, that's not going to be good.
You're not allowed to use the H word as a man.
I guess I'm a toxic male.
Toxic male. Go back and listen to episode 2.
So I mean, like, how have you ladies navigated mental health? We're talking about kids being overtouched, being overstimulated, and all the roles that women, moms, have to play. How do you manage mental health?
It's a daily battle for me anyway. I can only speak for me, but it's a daily battle for me. I come from a line of women who have battled depression, who've battled body dysmorphia who have battled their way to where they are. And that has been who I am as well. And so sometimes I do it well and I feel good and can have clarity and feel like I'm making great decisions and I'm a great boss or I'm a great mom or what. And most days I feel like I don't know what I'm doing and I need to sleep in my bed and in the dark but I have to battle those inner voices and those inner desires, those inner feelings to go against what I'm feeling and what I desire to go and do what I need to do and what I've been called to do and what I've said yes to. So for me, it's a battle. It looked very different in different seasons. So when I first had my kids, I struggled with postpartum and I didn't get on medication until I had my second son. And even on medication, it helps, but it doesn't take everything away. Like you have to, at some points, make yourself a priority. So you have to take care of yourself to be able to take care of your kids, be able to take care of your husband. So you have to go get a counselor. You have to talk to somebody. You have to have a friend. And I know that's hard. Like I had seasons of friends. I will say I am not currently in a season of a lot of close friends. So that ebbs and flows too. It's like everything in our life ebbs and flows. And those seasons come when you really need them. Like those women come when you need them. And when you're like, Lord, I'm at my end, like I don't know what to do. I would not have survived my kids being little without those people because they came over and they made the dinner some nights or they took them when dad was off doing whatever, working in overtime or whatnot. And I could not handle anymore. I was very fortunate to have that. Some people don't, and I'm sorry for that. Like
Thanks.
that really sucks. It really does. Like I'm just fortunate in that season I had that. And yeah, I don't know. That's what I got.
That's hard. Like I said, thanks laughing, but like seriously, I mean, I feel like my closest friends, my best friend, one is in Texas. My best friend, two, is in Atlanta.
Wow.
And so we're all three of us are moms with young kids and we're all like in very similar seasons, but we can't get close enough to each other. And so it's hard. So our like exchanges are voice notes. Like I was just not joking. It's a real thing. It was not a joke. But my best friend left me a 20-minute voice note. And I'm like, I don't have time to listen to it. There's no like fast forward on this. I'm literally here trying to read the transcript. And I'm like, girl, because we can't catch each other on the phone, you know? But that has still provided a community of some sort, even though it's not the like what you're saying, like somebody's coming over and making dinner. But I do have one of my really good friends. She's become like a sister to me, who is in Virginia. And that's still not close enough because I don't get to see her all the time. But, you know, I struggled with postpartum with Isla, with my second child. And she was there for me. Like she showed up at our house. I mean, she was there when Isla was born. She to take care of Nola. She came over, she made me food, she cleaned the house, and like that, I will never, ever, ever forget that for her. Like how the way she showed up for me as I was like, just, I couldn't do anything. Like she came, she did my hair. Like I was just like a hot mess, you know? And she wanted to be there. You know, that was a really cool thing. She wanted to be there for me. It shouldn't make me feel like a burden. And I think some of us have some of that because we have, you know, friends in different spaces for different times. And so when you're fun and everything's going good, you got a bunch of people around you, but you learn through these seasons who is really there as you transition into motherhood, as you transition into being married. It's just a different space. And I know that there are women who get very offended by this.
Well, it's because they're hurt. They want it. They long for it. And you just don't know how to communicate it.
And it's hard. And I've lost friends through this journey. When I got married, I lost friends. When I had children, I lost friends. And it's like people, you're like, dang, I wasn't expecting this, but it happens.
But it's not just in those big seasons either.
Yeah.
Like it's in all of them. You go into ministry, you lose friends.
That's true. Yeah.
You have teenagers, you lose friends. Like it's constant.
Happens. But I think it's a refinement.
Absolutely.
Right? Because at the end, you end up with this like really solid, hopefully core people who you know are like the ride or dies kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they're really there for you. And I feel like that's the season I'm in right now with the friends I have now. Do I wish I had more local? Yes, that would be amazing. Yep. And I'm working on it. I'm in a season of trying to open back up and make room for that, you know? Yeah. But you mentioned the thing about the hormones. I want to just let me see. Okay, so yes, women go through things, right? We have our menstrual cycle. We have what's that thing called?
Perimenopause.
Whoa! Educate me.
Perimenopause.
What?
Perimenopause is what happens before menopause. Yes.
Oh, so y'all be going through it.
You go through it. You never not go through it. We are always continuously going through it.
It's constant, Theo.
That's wild.
Yeah. So you have the perimenopause, menopause. Like it's all of this stuff that's happening, and so like to me, it's beautiful resilience of women. I think men looking in on it can, you know, many of the like divorces and stuff happen during perimenopause, menopause time for women and men, because men don't know how to support. They actually don't know what's going on. There's not a whole lot of literature on it, even for women to understand what's happening to themselves.
It's getting better.
It's getting better
for sure. Because I am heading into that season and am working with doctors now to kind of ease into that as it comes. Because I thought I was in it. I'm not, thank the Lord. But it's approaching and like, whoa, what is it? My mom didn't tell me this.
Yeah. So I'm fortunate here in the space where my mom is telling me about it. So it's almost too much. I'm like, Mom, I don't want to deal with the other dooming thing that's coming. Like, just let me be here right now, you know? But I mean, with all of this, I mean, there's a lack of knowledge in this area. And so we see the divorce, we see the men cannot figure out how to sustain. But I think with education, hopefully there'll be more support in this area from the men. Because you mentioned something earlier, Kacie, like we go through all of these things, and for women, you have to just continue going for the most part. Men, because it's very rare what I'm going to say, but most of the time it is the father who leaves the family. Right? There are cases where a mom cuts off and leaves but that is the
but when that happens, it's shocking. It jars you.
Yes.
But when you hear a dad walk away,
it's sad,
no big deal.
It's not surprising.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And so what I'll say is, like, I think that women get a bad rap for the hormones and all of the stuff, but I mean, mental health is mental health, and I think men go through things as well. They just have an option to leave, and so they seem more stable because they're not dealing with their stuff. Right. And so you look at an emotional woman, you're like, oh, wow, she's so emotional. No, she is trying to deal with all of the things. And yeah, the man who just walked away seems to be okay because he is no longer having to confront all of these things. He has the ability to walk away. Right.
When you say the ability to walk away, you mean to leave the family?
To leave the family. Like,
as in for good, or as in to go to work and get some peace and quiet for a couple hours?
I mean, no, more because some women leave the office too, the home too, or whatever. No, but I mean, leave a family for good.
Gotcha.
You know, and so we see, like, you know,
I think both have the option. I think the men just lean into it more.
Yes, they exercise
because, like, you know, we fight these terrible thoughts all the time, and you just have to push them away. Like, we kind of get distracted, I think, sometimes from those thoughts, whereas men might not.
Yeah. And there is less, I think, on society, there is less like you were saying, like it's less taboo for a man to decide to leave a family, to not be there for his children. If you see a single mom, you're like, okay, yeah, it's a single mom. You see a single dad, you're like, wait, what happened to the mom?
Yeah.
What's going on? Yeah. Like, something tragic must have happened, right? Like, this is what our go-to is. And so I think, you know, yes, we could talk about women's mental health, but we also have to talk about the health of the man too, all the time, mental health, because I think it's really unfair for you all that you're expected also, like, I know y'all go through things and you're expected to swallow it up. And I think this is why we have so many issues right now going on, because men don't have a space to, not all men, not all
most
spaces.
men.
No.
but many men in many places don't have a space to actually confront, oh yeah, this is what I'm thinking. This is how I'm feeling. This is not healthy. And maybe if they had that, maybe we would have more men stick it out during these really difficult times that women go through, which is what we're called to.
Counseling's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Right.
I will always be an advocate for a counselor.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Always.
I have said multiple times from platform and so many times in conversation that God created us as whole people, mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. And oftentimes we want to address one, maybe two, when it's usually a mix of the three. You know, men, women, whoever, like you gotta take care of yourself mentally. Can't argue with statistics as far as like there are way more men that leave than women. But there is also the real thing of the hormones and things that women face that amplifies, I feel like, the things you're dealing with on the daily, right? So if my wife and I both had the same exact day, I don't know this because there's no real date on it, but if we have the same exact day, we're going to react to it differently. One, because she's a woman, I'm a man, but two, it could be whatever her body's doing in that moment too, right? Which I always found to be just wild and interesting.
It's wild.
But it's also like if we come back and submit it right back to God, like to me, the appropriate way, the way that we would respond if we weren't in a fallen space would be to be curious about it. So I see something going on in my partner that I don't understand. So I'm going to express frustration and anger and say that this person's emotional, this person's crazy, I can't handle this, I'm just going to leave the house so that and leave the person reeling. As opposed to like, let me become curious about what these changes are that are happening within my wife. Let me see, even if she won't talk to me because she doesn't know what's going on, but am I doing my part to read about this, to understand this, to blah, blah, blah. And I find that like, this is not a generalization. This is for me, for myself. When something's going on in my home, I am the one that I'm going to be so curious and I'm going to read all the stuff and try to figure it out with my kids, with my husband, with me. I'm the one who's like, trying to absorb all the information to try to fix things. My husband's that way about his projects. Right? Like he is like, I don't even know, like some bar is needed or something. And he'll go and 10,000 YouTube hours later know everything about the bar, right? Yeah. But I'm like, hey, what about, you want to read a book on like these kids or like what's going on here? And be like, yeah, I'll get to it. I'll
training. How do we do that?
Yes,
Where
right?
do we even start?
So, so for me, I'm the one who's holding that information. Again, I come back to like this my role, helping and creating the home and all this stuff. So I'll do that and I'll pass along the information gladly because I'm not going to go figure out what's wrong with that bar.
Yeah, not in a million years.
They're not doing it. I'm not watching not even a single YouTube video.
Nope.
Right, on that. So like this is how we... But if I'm in a space where really like things are going crazy in my home, I think we need to get better at fighting through it remaining and staying. And I know that some people are here and you're saying like, oh yeah, well, I did fight to stay. And what you really meant is I waited 4 months for this to go away and it didn't go away in 4 months and I can't live like this another day.
Yep.
That's not fighting.
Yeah. The word you use, curiosity, is so good. I was actually just talking to a friend of mine a couple of days ago, and he used that word curiosity. He was talking about how through prayer and fasting and just, time with God, he said, I have this genuine curiosity about my wife. And I was like, curiosity, I was like, that's a really good word. That's an inspiring word. He said the mantra he's been saying to himself is curiosity, not control. Yeah. And I was like, that's so good. It could be for men, for women, whatever. Yeah. But this idea of, like you said, when something is a little off, I don't need to try to control it. I need to have the curiosity to try to figure out what's going on with my partner,
but
especially
also, when you have that, it makes us feel so loved when you're curious about us.
So true.
Because we are so complex. We don't understand ourselves. We don't know. So we're trying to figure it out. And if you're trying to figure it out for us without us initiating anything,
it's the best.
Let's go.
It's so funny because I'll talk to my husband sometimes. He knows this, so I'm not telling on him. And my husband is phenomenal. 100%. Best guy ever. We will talk sometimes and like I'll be like, so what do you think about like XYZ or whatever? And he's like, yeah, and da da da. Again, it's a whole conversation about blah blah, and then just like go off to do his own thing. And I'm like, wait, you're not going to ask me the question back? Like, you're not going to say, what do you think? Like, and I'm like literally hanging there.
I'm
like,
guilty of that one too.
I'm like, clearly I asked you this because I want to start a conversation, not just hear your thoughts on this and then whatever. So he's gotten so much better. Good job, babe. But like, it's a joke. Like, so that when he does ask me, and it doesn't always happen right away. So he'll like, I'll ask whatever, he'll give his answer, blah, blah. And then he'll like go start to do something. And he'll literally come back in the room. He's like, oh, so what did you think about that? Like, I see him like trying to like come back in.
That's so good.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's a natural thing, right? Like, as women, we have that desire for our husbands, and we want to know, and we want to blah, blah, blah. And for men, y'all have to work at it a little bit more. Not that you don't love us any less, but you just, it's the same thing with the men, your boy relationships. I'm like, he'll come home and drop like this enormous bomb on me about like some friend thing. And I'll be like, oh my gosh. So like, what are the details? Oh, I don't know. I'm like, you didn't ask? You didn't ask anything? There's no follow-up? There's nothing? He's like, no, man, I figure he said what he wanted to say.
What did he say? Okay.
Come on.
What did you say? All right.
Yeah, like, I need more. Yeah.
Yeah, my wife gets so mad at me when I don't have details to something. And I'm like, I told you everything I know. She's like, that's not anything.
I'm going to start sending y'all out with templates. Like, who, what, where, when. Don't come back unless these questions answered. This. Yes.
All right. So as we kind of tie this in a nice little knot, put a nice little bow on this, I want to know, what is something you read, something you heard that changed you as a woman? We've shared some of that now, and I know we can go for another 2 hours on that topic alone. Yeah. But if I guess if you had to wrap it up and something you would suggest every young lady to read, or a quote, or just something that means something to you, I would usually start off, but I'm not a lady, so
wow, what a cop out! What a cop out! What a cop out!
You have to prepare me for this question. It was not on the notes, sir.
I'm gonna take another kind of cop out answer, but it's not. But I really would encourage everybody, not just men, or not just women, but men and women, to come back and really study the women that surrounded Jesus, and see the inherent worth that he put on that, the worth that he like put on them, but also elevated them from the space that they were in, and try to read it without like the blinders of trying to make it say something it's not. But like, go study the life of Mary Magdalene, go study the life of Mary of Bethany, go look at Martha, for all the bad things, she did a lot of things right too. Yeah. And she was around Jesus. She kept the company of Jesus. And that really, seeing those women is what helped me really understand that I could be called into ministry as well. And that I didn't have to just sit behind and watch all this stuff. And like, I know this is not the topic, but women in ministry and all this stuff, but it's what encouraged me. Like, no, there were women that were with Jesus, and that ministry was supported by women, and the funds and the money that women put into it. So I would encourage women to go back and read some of those stories.
Something that I need to tell myself and continue to tell myself all the time is, because of Jesus, I'm enough. You're enough.
That's good. So good. Well, thank you, Maxine.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kacie. And I want to thank y'all for joining us for another episode Between Sundays, where we dive into conversations that simply need to be had. All right. So join us for the next episode. You're not going to want to miss it. Remember to like, subscribe, share, give us all the feedback. We want to hear from you. Love y'all. See you next time.